The quality is so much better than what you would buy on the high street with fast fashion since the 1990s. The high street is mass-produced global products, the cheapest possible fabrics, loads of polyester, poorly constructed. Primark being our number one British retailer says it all really, doesn't it? Very, very low prices, produced en masse, so everyone's going to be wearing the same thing. It's better quality. It's individual. You're not going to see other people with that same garment. But the other aspect, which I love about vintage, is the experience of shopping for vintage. And this is what my PhD focuses on, because of my visual merchandising background, it's about the spaces. So I'm focusing on the vintage fair, but it would be the same if you went into a vintage shop as well. It's about treasure hunting. So it's the experience of finding those things. And you will never go out to a vintage market or fair or shop with something specific in mind. I need to buy a leather jacket or something like that. You will always come across it by accident. So one of the things I've found through my studies is that serendipity is one of the major factors in vintage shopping. So it's the idea of just purely by chance you will come across something that is just the most beautiful, amazing garment that suits you perfectly, that fits you. It's beautifully made, gorgeous quality, and if you would have bought it originally, possibly in the 1960s or 70s, it would have been very expensive. But you can, added bonus, pick it up for next to nothing. Because if you're not too much of a connoisseur, and for me it's, I'm not into buying top level designer vintage. That can be, some of it can be hundreds of pounds. I'm just talking about the cheap stuff that you'll come across in a charity shop or at a vintage fair. A brand like Jaeger or Burberry even, you might by accident find it for a tenner. So it's a huge bargain as well. So that's 3 major motivations for me.
Why do you think there's been such a change in terms of quality of clothing?
It's globalization really. If you look at the fashion industry and the way that the clothes are made, it's all about increasing profit margins. People are buying a lot more stuff and they're renewing in their wardrobes a lot more often. So this fast fashion thing is about mass consumption of cheap clothing. It's just, it's not about the quality, because people just want a lot of clothing for very little. So you go into Primark, you can even buy a jacket for like £15. Obviously that's not going to be made very well, and it's going to be made with the cheapest possible fabric. Whereas in the past, people had a lot less. Think about the idea of people's Sunday best. They'd keep their special best clothes for the odd occasion, and during at the weekend and in the week, they'd just wear the same clothes for work every day. But nowadays, people are just buying a lot more, and it's of a lower quality. I think people's perception of what the price should be has changed because of things like Primark. People aren't so willing to pay £300 for a jacket, say, rather than £15, because there's lots of sustainable manufacturers now who sell sustainable fashion, which is eco, cotton, fair trade materials, and it's beautifully made in small quantities. But only some people can afford to buy it. And the idea of vintage is that after you've worn it, you might be the 5th person. So it's not just second hand, it might be 5th hand. But then still, it will have wear in it to hand it on to the next person. So it continues on its journey, and it's all the stories that it collects along the way of the different people who've worn that clothing. You couldn't do that with Primark because it's rubbish, isn't it? You wash it a few times and it's usually destroyed and has to be thrown away.